viewers, welcome to the third episode of Reachiing's videocast, where we invite practitioners to discuss and provide insights on topics that are within Reachiing's 4 thematic areas and of relevance to your audience. In case you do not already know, Reachiing with a 3I is an online publishing platform making research messaging interesting, insightful, and impactful. We provide quality research-based information on government plus economy, technology plus innovation, business plus investment, and life-related topics in simple and interesting formats for young Africans and global citizens. All right, I'm Precious Akanonu, and on this episode of Reachiing's videocast, we will be discussing how to safely reopen schools during this COVID-19 pandemic. If you find the discussion interesting and you want to learn more about the topic or other related topics, you can leave a comment. We'll be discussing with Dr. Adedeji Adeniran. He is the Director of Governance and Education Research at the Center for the Study of Economies of Africa. And he has some interesting insights and quite practical ideas on how to go about this. So let's dive right in. So as a preamble, from estimates, we know that COVID-19 pandemic could last up to 2021. Because the historical experiences like from other pandemics like 1918 influenza and SARS supports this estimate. With the lack of adequate high-skilled labor in Africa, it's detrimental. It's bad for African nations to let her children out of school for over 1 year due to the stay-at-home guidelines for controlling the spread of the virus. While the stay-at-home guideline creates a temporary out-of-school problem for our primary and secondary school children, there's also a risk that the number of out-of-school children would permanently increase in the region because some children, especially older and poorer children, will be lured into the labor market to support their families. Also, public schools have been an important point where government, NGOs are providing supporting school services like school meals, sanitary pads, and immunization. So with school closure, many children will be denied of these things for as long as they stay at home during this period. So while we must not expose our children to COVID-19, to this virus, learning and all these supporting school services must not cease. There must be something we can do as a continent. So today, we have invited an education expert. Like I said, he's Dr. Adedeji Adeniran. He's the Director of Education and Governance Research at the Center for the Study of Economies of Africa. And he will share some insight on how we can address this problem. Welcome, Dr. Adedeji.
Thank you, Precious, for the opportunity to speak to you on this very important issue. So globally, everybody is talking about one issue, COVID-19, and how it is affecting every aspect of our life. So I'm happy to be talking to you about this.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Excited to have you. Thank you. So let's dive right into the question. So for the first one, we know that learning must not cease, and especially for vulnerable groups during this time. You wrote an article that is published on Brookings that highlights some of these things. So what measures have been implemented so far in African countries to ensure that children continue education?
So thank you. Since the pandemic hits the African shore, there has been a lot of measures that has been introduced by government and policymakers at federal and subnational levels in order to control the spread. And one of those measures is closure of schools. According to UNESCO statistics, in primary and secondary school alone, more than 250 million kids in Africa were affected that are in school before, but due to the pandemic, they had to stay at home. Now, when you then look at the fact that education must not wait, and if it must not wait, we must actually try to do some things to make it continue. So what are these kind of measures? One, and the easiest one, is the remote learning kind of facilities. And what this means is providing people with digital platforms like personalized kind of training. You send it to their computer or to the parents' phone, whereby they can look at what to do and do all sorts of things that they would have been doing in school. In fact, you can improve it so much that there will be direct interactions among children, direct interaction with the teachers, and these are kind of tools that, I mean, even prior to the pandemic, a lot of people have been advocating for personalized training. So it's like an opportunity to introduce that into the system. But if you look at African context, statistics is quite worrisome. Only less than 25% of African countries have actually implemented or introduced any form of remote learning. So it's there, but it's quite concentrated in urban area and children that attend these elite schools. For public schools and the rest, what government resorted into is what we call radio and TV broadcast. Right? If you look at state level, they broadcast directly to kids and trying to ensure that they continue to learn something, right? Which, I mean, all of these are very good. But the key issue we have to raise is, again, this mass learning radio, television is targeted at mass education, right? And if you look at the statistics prior to the pandemic, a very large chunk of the population of people in school are not learning. According to World Bank's analysis, when you look at kids in primary 6, and when they are asked to read a paragraph, and they were tested for ability to understand, comprehend, and answer simple questions on those paragraphs, 87% of primary 6 children cannot actually complete that. They used that to make what is called learning poverty. And when they do that, they said like 87% of the kids in sub-Saharan African countries are learning poor. And they are in school. We are not talking about people that are not in school. Now, it then raises an important issue. If they are in school and we cannot reach them, do you think radio, TV, which are meant for more mass education, do you think it will be able to reach them? I think the simple answer will be no. Also, when you look at distributional effects, many even in rural and in rural area, or many, I mean, a minority still doesn't have even access to, say, television, right? And even when they have it, sometimes all this internet or even network,
yeah,
is effective even in some areas, such that there is always a barrier between teaching and learners. Also, I mean, when we talk about the ability to inculcate learning, the issue of modern tongues come into it. You would agree with me that in some instances, we cannot actually achieve this with mass education. So mass education is good, it's very important, and but in these present circumstances, we know very little learning will take place. And we also know, because of what we've witnessed in the past, let me give you an example of what happened in Sierra Leone during the Ebola crisis. So school were closed for 8 months because of Ebola. And government actually made some intervention like radio, television, and the rest in order to ensure that learning continued. After 8 months, when kids resumed to school, only very few could recall what has been learned, either before the crisis or even during this radio TV program. And so it tends to show you that kids in Africa need more personalized learning.
right.
Already, we know from research that they are already being introduced to curriculum beyond their peak. And if that is the case, the solution is for you to actually target learning to the pace of the learner.
Great.
But in this instance, we are not allowed, I mean, mass education, mass kind of radio, TV cannot allow us to achieve that. So those are the kind of problem with the present kind of interventions.
Great. So there is an inherent problem with the current interventions for remote learning. This brings me to the next question. You recently developed an approach detailing how education can continue in African countries in the midst of COVID-19 as part of efforts to continue education and reduce out-of-school children problem. Can you run us through these ideas so that we can have a knowledge of that?
Okay, so it's just to put another option on the table to see how do we ensure that learning continue amidst this crisis. And the idea is school environment can be a very good factor. Because you look at the remote learning kind of, what you do through the computer is basically you try to pass what a child should cover to him without much contact between the teacher and the learners, right? We can actually do something much more similar by ensuring that we open school and we use it as a place where kids come in order to exchange materials and assignments with each other. So take for instance, as the teachers you prepare for your class, the lesson that will be covered, and maybe for yesterday's lessons, the assignment, they will drop it, you mark it, you prepare everything. The kids come to school, they would collect what they need to study. If they have assignment, they will drop it. And so there will be a form of regular exchange between teachers and the students, such that they were able to know what to cover. They will be assessed about their performance from what they've learned, and that exchange will be taking place, even though on a slower pace, but the exchange will be taking place such that we continue to ensure that we follow through and we personalize learning for kids, especially those ones that have been left there. And the beauty of it is we can do it in a very smart way. We can concentrate on, say, core subjects, mathematics and language, whereby you just teach those core subjects, because those are actually the gateway to learning. If you are very good in mathematics and if you are good with reading, I don't see you having much problem in biology, because you read it, you understand it, you contextualize it, right? So most other things are just contextualizing. The gateway to learning is the subject, and actually that is what many children in Africa is lacking. Those gateways, they cannot read, they cannot comprehend, and in fact, if we use this window to concentrate on those things just alone, we would be able to achieve a lot, even what we've not done over many years. So we just concentrate on those two subjects, ensure that regularly there is this kind of exchange platform between student and children. This is what you will cover. He covers it, he's tested on it, the teacher will be grading it, and as such, so there will just be a cycle of exchange of materials and assignment and feedback to ensure that learning continues. We can even improve on that in many instances. Maybe 5 or 3 kids are there that are not learning at all, and teachers can quickly pick them up to say, okay, this one I'm not learning. You can actually arrange for special lessons and targeted classes for those ones in order to ensure that they also learn. And we can also ensure that, like all the other teachers, that will not be able to be teaching any other thing, that they've been employed to do. They can actually ask as supporting teachers, such that math and language teachers, their hand is not full at all. They will have a lot of supporting teachers, even volunteers can come in order to ensure that they have enough tasks to spread around and ensure that we can take care of needs of every child. Using that, it's not to say that we should use it everywhere. It's just to use it when appropriate. So if you have some areas or localities where there is issue about remote learning, it's better you just introduce those kind of platforms. And because of you are limiting interactions, you are ensuring that it's not that they come in and sit down, it's just that they, and very less contact between even kids themselves and between the teachers. It still sustains the idea of social distancing and flattening the curve in order to curb the disease. So so the key idea is let's change or turn school from a meeting point to exchange point of material.
That's amazing. Turning schools to exchange points to continue learning. That's great. How can African governments set up this new education approach? What is required for a government to successfully set it up, whether at the local level or at the state level or nationally?
These are something for at local level, because solution to ensure that learning is not something that can be, so like in some private schools, in some settings, I mean, remote learning is working, online learning is taking place. I mean, you don't need to actually stop that. So that needs to continue. It's just to target it towards where you know that things are not thinking. I mean, things are not going on well. And when we do this, it will be context specific. The education stakeholders, government, parents, community needs to decide the best approach. But the key thing is for us to recognize that these are the needs. I mean, where do they need it most? When we identify that these areas learning is not taking place, all we need to do is to deploy resources like ability to mass produce material, right? And we can achieve that through negotiation with copyright authorities to ensure that we use local resources to produce it, maybe even photocopying materials and the rest. I mean, with very good negotiation with for copyright. That's number one. To ensure we do this also, we need to work with community leaders and civil society, because they can track, monitor what is going on. School may need to be some kind of cleaning to ensure that the earthwise is not where people can have another contact with the virus. So we need to do that. So once we know that school is clean and secure, teachers can always come in. I mean, they could with limited interaction among teachers. All you need to do is come prepare your for your class for that day. Your class come in, they pick their lessons, they go back home, they do what they should do. You continue to grade the assignment from the previous day, and you do this back and forth. So it's something so straightforward, like it's just like what we've been doing already. That kids come to school, only that they don't come to just sit down and learn. They come to pick things up. So it's something that's very straightforward. And you can see some of these ideas actually parallel what we see in other sectors. So look at the restaurant. In many areas, they say, okay, restaurants should not open. So what do they resort to? Takeout.
Yeah.
You come in, food, you go home, you eat. And it ensures that things, everybody continue to live and the businesses continue. So it's just something similar to such that we ensure that school continue. And we should recognize that when we talk about the effect of COVID-19, it's not just effect on children that are not learning. What about the education workforce, the teachers? You know, most teachers will not earn any money, or they've not earned anything in the last 2 months because of this COVID-19. When parents are not, when kids are not in school, parents are not expected to pay. So what happens in those instances? You discourage a kind of profession that is already under stress, right? So we need to ensure that by we opening up school, it serves as a form of motivation to this to the education work. Also, access to auxiliary school facilities like sanitary pads, sometimes immunization, school feeding are quite critical to growth of the child. Nutrition is one of the key factors in development of a child. And that's actually the key thrust of the school feeding program, to ensure that we give our little ones equal opportunity by ensuring they have access to nutritious meal. And that's what we've been doing. If we are not doing that again, I mean, and you close down the school for 1 year, the damage will be permanent for that child that have no access, because the brain will have developed and things will have moved on. I'm not a psychologist, not a neurologist, but I mean, if you look at child development charts, they said the important years are during the early childhood age, between from 0 to around 5 years. That's when the brain develops, and it is the quality of food you eat that helps in those instances. So we need to ensure that we keep those going and it's not affected. You also see high incidence of rape in recent times. One factor that can be driving that is closure of school, because when kids are at home, you should recognize that they experience more abuse, even from parents. Parents beat them more, and elders within the community, they beat them more. And also those kind of child abuse also increases because of this. So it's just to say, okay, let's keep life going, such that we don't need to have the trade-off between our health and our future, which is the education of the children.
That is amazing, amazing point. I like the restaurant analogy you gave. So my last question, you mentioned about communities, civil society. So I would like to find out what civil societies and individuals can do to support this approach and ensure that it's successful.
So for community and civil society, you can be a volunteer in ensuring that learning continues, volunteering to schools to ensure that training sanitation and sanitizing the school. You could support, I mean, if you have the right skill set, to support subject teachers in what they are doing or what they will be doing. Even as the parent, you can even be the one that will actually go to school to pick up these materials, right? So that you don't even need to send the kid to school if you think it's not safe. So everybody has a role to play. Community can also act like a watchdog to ensure that the phased implementation of school reopening is done in a very coordinated manner, and that we don't jeopardize our health also with it. So those are kind of things they could do. They can also mobilize local resources in order to ensure that we sustain learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Adedeji, for joining us today. We hope you have time some other time to join us and share more insights. To our viewers, thank you for watching. We hope you found this useful. Feel free to drop a suggestion for our next topic on government and economy. Until our next episode, it's a wrap.